5:45 p.m. Ms. Jimenez, could you please take the roll?
Councilmember Henry.
Here.
Councilmember Cura.
Present.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Nair.
Here.
Councilmember Wilder.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hall.
Here.
Mayor List.
Here. All right, item for discussion, consideration, possible legal action, special event liquor license application submitted by Christian Oliva del Rio, applicant for the Cottonwood Chamber of Commerce for a chamber mixer scheduled for September 16th, 2021 at the Cozy Cafe located at 115 South Main Street.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the Chamber dropped off a special event liquor license application last Friday for the chamber mixer to be held this Thursday at the Cozy Cafe.
All right. I would motion to approve the special event liquor license.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Karat seconded it. Roll call vote, I guess.
Yes. Councilmember Henry.
Yes.
Councilmember Cura.
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews.
Yes.
Councilmember Nair.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilder.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Mayor List.
Yes. All right, I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Wilden seconded it. All in favor?
I haven't really
Aye.
looked into the
You're
notice
joining
agenda
anywhere.
all over the weekend. Yeah, it won't let me change password or anything either, so.
Joint work session of the City Council with the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held September 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. at the Cottonwood Recreation Center. If we could have our clerk please take the roll.
Councilmember Henry.
Here.
Councilmember Kira.
Present.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Nara.
Here.
Councilmember Wilden.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hall.
Here.
Mayor Olinsky.
Here, thank you. And I know we have the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission on phone, but Chairman Williams, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and have your vice chair take the role for your commission just to make it, or for your commission to make it easy. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay, I wasn't prepared. I am here. That's Vice Chair Maston, Commissioner Romeo,
Here.
Commissioner Kling,
Here.
Commissioner DeSisto,
Here.
Commissioner Garrison.
Present.
That's all of us, correct?
All right, thanks. Sorry to spring that on you. I know it's hard to hear when you're on the phone, Chairman Williams, so we'll do our best to speak into the mic and make sure you can hear us, okay?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You bet.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a presentation, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding a proposed residential resort-style development on state trust land off State Route 260 and Camino Real. Great. Good evening, Ms. Lewis.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and Chairman Williams and the Planning Commission. I am Tricia Lewis, Tourism and Economic Development Director here at the city, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. So just to give a little background on the project before I introduce our developer who's here tonight, he reached out to me in about April of this year asking if we could talk about some land that he was looking at north of what had just been annexed for Spring Creek. So I said, well, actually we have another area that might be of consideration, and so we talked about it, and through the course since April through now, we've had many discussions, either with internally and then with our development team. So we've been providing a lot of input from our perspective and just felt that it would be great, and this is the proper time for him to hear from all of you, from the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So Bruce Barrett is here tonight. He is from Utah, so welcome. And I'm going to hand it over to him. He does have a presentation to show you tonight. So does anyone have any questions before I pass it on to him?
Any
Okay,
questions
Bruce?
for Ms. Lewis, Council?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it. I'll talk loud, maybe too loud, and as I'm going through here, the whole idea of this is I'm not actually doing a,
Mr. Barrett, I'm really sorry, sir, but we're going to have you get on a mic so that we can record this.
okay,
Even if you speak loud, we won't be able to pick it up at all, and our chairman won't be able to hear you. I apologize.
so do you want me to go to the mic over there and then come back over here and change the?
We'll bring a mic to you, sir.
Trying to put it like it nobody wants to see.
No, this is my.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, is that better? Can we hear it?
I believe so. I think that'll work out much better. Thank you.
Okay. So as Tricia said, we went through and we've actually gone through 3 sites in Sedona to look for a property for the project that we're doing. Our company is called Permeable Resorts, and we do large lifestyle communities that are about a third resort, a third secondary, a third primary, highly amenitized. We have 2 projects in St. George underway, another one, a new ski resort in Ogden Valley in Utah. We have been negotiating on some land between north of Tucson and also some land in the Coachella Valley in the Palm Desert. And we're very interested in Sedona, Cottonwood. The area is stunning. The Verde Valley tourism is exceptional, very charming, the historic downtown streets in Jerome and Cottonwood and such. And what we feel is we have an ability to put something in here that would be profitable for us, clearly, but also incredibly beneficial for the greater Verde Valley area and Cottonwood specifically. And so on the screen is the outline of the school trust lands. I think everybody's probably familiar with it as you drive along the road on the top of it. So I'll switch over another screen if everybody is good with that.
Excuse me, Mr. Is it possible to get a projection on this back screen?
It is not, sir.
I'm sorry, it is not.
So what I did was I put together a paper that I think you guys have potentially seen or talked about. And what I want to talk about is just what the possibilities are. So the point of this meeting is to find out if the city has any interest in what we're doing, because on this property, it is quite an involved process. What we would have to do with the Arizona state lands is we would go in at our expense and we would provide them a master plan for the 741 acres. And then they would have to divide that land into sections and put each of those sections up sequentially over time for auction. And so our concern as we came into this is we could end up doing a master plan that a lot of people like. It goes to Arizona state lands. They divide the land, and then it's an open auction, and some resort or even residential developer comes in and buys the land. And so in conversations with state lands, what they informed us is that if there is an economic benefit to the city or county, that they can put restrictions on the buyers coming into the property. You can say, clearly this is zoned as resort property. You can say it needs to have your own package plant sewer system in order to reclaim all the water for all the outdoor irrigation. You have to buy secondary water rights for your water amenities. So they can put on there, with the agreement of the city, restrictions that means that the property is going to end up as intended, as opposed to sold off to a developer who will come in and put in housing if that's what they want. And so the conversation today is, what does the city want this 740 acres, 41 acres to be? The proposal that we're doing would have substantial sales tax, transient room tax, would have properties that met a number of different needs. So the property would include public parks and trails, public access, water recreation and surf park, bike pump track, housing that, so in your housing study, there's a couple areas that are gapped, right? And one of them is in the 60,000 to 170,000 income range. This is not obviously a home price range. That is an income range that it shows there's a shortage in the city and the area for those properties. And we can certainly build properties that are in, that would be affordable for that price range, okay? We would also do our own employee housing. Substantial resort development with public access village center that leans into tourism and the local wine tasting tours. Village would have family entertainment center, small movie theater, restaurant, shopping, AR, VR experiences. And then I put on here the same thing as Tlaquepaque and Sedona Western Great Gateway Plan, only completely different. Meaning that if you've looked at the Sedona Western Gateway Plan, which is quite detailed, and I included in the documents, it's an area to bring in a lot of people, to bring in a lot of tourism, to bring in a lot of tourists that are interested in the experiences that are available locally, have a place to stay, is a walking only community, but it clearly would not be designed like Tlaquepaque. It would not be designed like the Sedona Western Gateway. So it's a similar concept, but not a similar design. Okay? Secondary vacation homes for those who want to be in the region but either can't afford Sedona or potentially more importantly don't want to be in the level of congestion on a daily basis that you get through Oak Creek and Sedona, where every day is 2 hours of driving in traffic. Co-working and office space for the people for residential and even secondary, so that there is commerce in the location as well. So we would include there a package plant where we would use only reclaimed water for all secondary irrigation and potential reinjection. We would want to do, as much as we're allowed, rainwater and stormwater capture. The area is large enough that we could potentially gather enough rainwater and stormwater either to capture and use or capture and reinject, that it would more than double or triple the amount of water that we would use for the water recreation amenities. Okay? Permeable pavers and swells. This is a question mark. Should we purchase water rights from Friends of Verde River for water feature evaporation? It's a question. We would definitely do a huge shuttle service. Our intent would be that we would have shuttles to historic Cottonwood and Jerome, and to Sedona, and to Phoenix and Sky Harbor throughout the entire property. And that'd be free shuttles going in and out of the property. Okay? Night sky compliance. Overall water usage equal to or lower than the Cottonwood average would be what our intent would be. So now we get into the water amenities, and it comes out to a per unit water budget of less than 11,000 gallons per year of water for the water amenities. And I've got another page that I'll get to here where we'll talk about that more. With that water potentially being purchased from farms going into conservation easements. The water amenities use about 10 gallons per person per use, compared to nearly 5,000 gallons for a single player for a single round of golf. And that's based on 470 acre feet a year for a golf course with 30,000 rounds. Okay. Now, golf courses down here and everywhere else are now moving to reclaimed water, so that's something to take into consideration. So the other things that we've contemplated, which could go in there or not go in there depending on what the interest of the city was: amphitheater, Top Golf for a Big Shots Golf, Culinary Institute, Desert Botanical Gardens. And then the second page is just a bunch of numbers from USGS on water usage in Yavapai County and Cottonwood County, talking about how much water is used in the area. There's a couple different numbers that I came up with, which was about 70,000 gallons per household per year. I've talked to Tom about this a bit, and so we are completely on board doing whatever we can with stormwater, secondary water, conservation to lower our water use. However, the reason for this meeting is I'm going to now show you what the water features are, and they're going to look like they use a lot of water. They don't use a lot of water because they are non-consumptive. They just have evaporation. Okay? And the issue for us is we would love to be in this area, we'd love to be on this property, but unless we're able to put in these water features, we just wouldn't do it. What we feel is that this area has tremendous potential, which you've already realized a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with out of Africa, the historic districts, the wine tasting, that is really exceptional. And what we're talking about is bringing in a very large resort second home community that is as nice as anything that is in Sedona. And that people would stay here and recreate here and eat locally and take the shuttles locally to the restaurants in the communities and do the wine tasting tours. And then they would go into, if they were here for a week, they'd go into Sedona probably once or twice for that week. The rest of the time they would stay and recreate either on property or in the Verde Valley area. Okay. So do I have any questions to that point? Is there anything you like or don't like as we have already started out?
Any questions, commissioners or council, for Mr. Barrett at this point?
I'd like to hear more.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions. I don't know if now's the right time or if you'll address these though, so.
No, if there's something that piques your interest, let's go with them.
I just had a question on the bullet points, the water calculations that you used for the development as a whole. Have you done that calculation? Because what we have in the packet is listed, is specified as just the water amenity usage.
Right, so the thought is that we could meet the average use of Cottonwood. So remember, a lot of our units are going to be second units that will not be full all the time. A lot of the units will be resort units. And so there'll be hotel units that will use less water. And so the thought, we have not done the engineering, we've not gone through that part, but the thought is that we can certainly meet the average in Cottonwood right now and reduce it. And then the second piece is through rain capture, stormwater capture, that we could probably capture enough water for the water amenities. And so overall, between the water amenities and the aggressive lowered use of water, that we should be able to come in under the current Cottonwood average. But no, we have not done the actual studies on those, so we're just in the conceptual ideas on that.
And I understand we're just at the very preliminary discussions. At this very preliminary stage, have you identified any farms that have expressed interest in going into conservation easements? And if so, do you have a ballpark idea of acre feet that you're looking at from them?
So we talked to Friends of the Verde River, and they expressed an interest. It helps them if we pay for those conservation easements. And our thought on here is that it might be 60 to 100 acre feet is all we're talking about, which is not nothing, but it's not a lot. It's somewhere in between.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, you said you were hoping to get utilize stormwater capture for the water amenities. Is that to offset the use of the water amenities or to actually use the physical water?
So we would actually capture the water, store it, clean it, and use it. But there are some areas, just in order to have a steady across the 12 months, that maybe we would re-inject it for a credit and then pull it out on the months where the stormwater is not available. But the idea would be, yes, to actually take the areas and build the retention areas for the water.
Okay.
If possible, if that works with environmental and utilities and such, if that's okay.
I think I'm more concerned, maybe Tom at some point, maybe not now can answer, but isn't there some law around stormwater capture that might preclude being able to utilize that for another purpose?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Whitmer is here to answer those questions. We can wait till the end if you want, or you can come up now and answer some of those. That's your
Well, I guess we'll wait till the end.
We can. I know that, you know, in this entire conversation, there's a lot of things that are really good for the city, but probably the number one point is clearly going to be water. And we understand that. Okay? All right, so I won't spend a lot of time on this one. This is just a green versus blue page. This is actually built for Utah. It's not built for Arizona. I apologize for that, but we're just exploring it. And it talks about how much water is used, but you guys already know this. You've already taken the steps here in Cottonwood that Utah has not taken anywhere. Utah uses, I think, the most water per capita than any place in the country. But it does actually, it's kind of interesting on the Utah water supply, both on the amount of acre feet per year, where it goes, and then what the economic value per acre foot is. Okay? So Utah actually complete 2 million acre feet, and 40% of our water in Utah goes to growing hay for cattle. Which, and it's, I'm not saying you take the water rights, they're their water rights, they've had them for a long time. I would never suggest something like that. But the economic value of those water rights are only $250 an acre foot. It's a very low value. Tourism in comparison has a tremendously high value, okay? So that is something that's maybe interesting, but maybe not, okay? So now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in here to the area. So the two big blocks that you have here are the 6,700 acre foot school trust land parcel surrounded by the annexation in black. And then you come into Cottonwood and then you come into the project, okay? And what this is me just cutting and pasting use types onto the property. This is not a conceptual master plan. This is not an engineered master plan. This is merely to show things on there to scale so you can get a feel for how they look and feel. So for instance, this is a top shot golf. It gives you an idea of the footprint on there. These units right in this area, these are actually the units that are at Enchantment Resort. So if you've been Enchantment Resort and you look at the triplex townhomes that they have there. This is the hotel of the Ritz-Carlton Oro Valley down by Tucson. This is the Hilton Squaw Point tennis courts and lazy river. So this is just to give a sense of how much land it is, how much stuff can go on there, okay? So now, if you look into here, you get into the main points, okay? So this is one configuration of a surf park, okay? And this surf park right here, you can make them any size or shape that you want, but this one right here is about, okay, that's about 4 surface acres, give or take. The evaporation in this area, to the best of my knowledge, is about 4 acre-feet per surface acre. So this is recycled water, it's filtered water, so you're not consuming it, but you do have the evaporation on it. So a facility like that is going to be 16 or 20 acre-feet of water per year in evaporation. Okay? And I'm going to jump really quickly, and I'm actually going to show you some surf parks to get a sense. Now these are all, so there are 4 surf parks that are going into the Palm Desert. Okay, so this one is in La Quinta, and this is a very, very big one. Much, 4 or 5 times size of what I'm talking about. And this is the picture of that design. Okay, so these are not standing waves, they're rolling waves. And like I said, this one's about 5 times the size of what we're talking about. Okay, so you have a village. This is one that is operating currently in Texas. This is the BSR Surf Park. That one's going into, I think, North Carolina. This one is in Rancho Mirage. Okay, and gives you can see there's multiple different manufacturers with different sizes and different shapes. Okay, and you can see the type of architecture that they're using there. This one is in Thermal, California, which is also in the Coachella Valley. Okay, and this is the type of architecture that we're thinking about, which is basically Scottsdale type architecture, indoor, outdoor. Okay. This one is the one going into Perth, Australia. And this one's about twice as big as what we're talking about. It's a very big one again. This is an actual picture of the one in Texas. This one is going up by Whistler Blackcomb above Vancouver. Okay, there's one in Japan. Okay, so those are surf parks. They can be big, small, or in between, but they're actual surfing. Okay. Coming back over to the Google Earth. So you can see in here we have a variety of uses, and then the main area that we're talking about is the very long ribbon of blue. Okay, that ribbon of blue is anywhere from 0 to about 6 feet deep, and on average a little bit under 100 feet across. Okay, so that ribbon in there is about 20 to 25 acres, and again would use about 80 to 100 acre feet of water per year in evaporation. The water is cleaned in place. It's by a company called Crystal Lagoons, which has enormous developments across the world, which I'll show you just a couple of them on really large scales. And what this does is this has a variety of resort product and resort villages and hotels and second homes, and then it also has single-family residential on the waterway. Okay, and this facility is public access. So it is a community movie theater, pool, recreation area where you can do all of those things. It is not a private members only, and you can do swimming, paddleboarding, sea kayaking, jet surfboards, things like that on it. Okay? And this, so first of all, this is the full 741 acres. The process that we would go through with Arizona State Lands is we would only take down 40 to 100 acres at a time. So in the phase one, it would be just this area right here in the middle, okay? So you would get maybe that line of water and maybe that line of water, and we would maybe get started on the surf park. So this development would be over probably at least 10 years, call it 10 to 20 years to build it out, would be the guess on it, okay? So just looking at what this looks like in a picture, okay, is okay. So they make these much, much bigger than what I'm showing. They do unlimited bodies of water. In the United States was one of the last countries to allow this technology to come in. There's now 3 in Florida with about a dozen planned. There's about 3 in Texas with a whole bunch planned. There's one that just got approved in Glendale. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a public access lagoon. It's got a Mattel roller coaster and hotel and right down in that area. And so half of them, or the majority of them in the US, are basically community pools like this, really, really big community pools. And then some of them are their public access lagoon concepts. We're doing none of those things. We are doing waterways, okay, that look more like these, okay, and more like that. So that would be one of the main areas. It would look like that, okay? So we're talking 80 to 100 acre feet of water per year. And where does that water come from so that it is not a unwise use of water in the area? And that's the thought of either doing the stormwater or purchasing the conservation easement rights and transferring it over so that it's not coming from the primary municipal supply. Okay? So there you go. The some of these pictures, I don't know if they are enticing or scary, but from our point of view, we have no interest in working on the project unless there is an interest, as the process with the state lands is prolonged and expensive to an uncertain end. And so the question is for Cottonwood to decide if there is an interest in having a large resort in the area, which you don't have. You have a lot of charming hotels, and you have a lot of charming locations for food and wine and everything else, but you definitely don't have any large resort hotels. Stunned silence, that's what I usually look for.
All right, Mr. Barrett, thank you for your presentation. We'll just open it up now for discussion with the commission and council. If there's any thoughts right off the top of your head, go ahead.
You mentioned a 10 to 20 year development timeline. What does that look like for local residents? In terms of like the way you develop, like is there always construction happening? Like how do you hide that? How do you stage it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what we do is we are not going to bring in here initially a Hyatt Regency or Ritz-Carlton or a Waldorf Astoria or something like that. What we start out is selling primary residential, secondary residential, townhomes and villas, and condo hotel units. So the first big buildings that go in there are condo hotel units where the product is purchased beforehand. So we go in, we acquire land, we do all the entitlement work, we do all the design work, And then we go into a sales and marketing stage where we market in this area predominantly into Phoenix, but some into Southern California. And we say, here's a great place if you want to be around Sedona. More amenities, nicer hotel, more things to do, less congestion, yet you can still get on the shuttle and be in Sedona in a half an hour. And you can still do your day trip to Sedona. And so we go out and then go into the market and offer the product for sale, and we take deposits. And we take deposits, so we don't build it before people buy it. We take refundable deposits. When we get enough deposits, we do a phase, and that phase could be anywhere from 100 units to say 300 units. In that area, you have the school on the south side, or on the north side, I'm sorry, that we would put a buffer around. So it's going to be a landscaping buffer, there's going to be a distance buffer, and you can see we're next to housing on the bottom, on the north end, and then we have kind of housing over to the right on the picture, but there's a lot of sort of washes and stuff through there. And so with the size of the property, I think you could minimize a lot of the disturbance. You also can come up the east side of the property and come in where you're not coming in off the highway, where you're not coming in through neighborhoods or anything like that. The other thing that we're looking at in a number of areas, because we go into sort of high demand, high expense areas where getting materials and contractors is hard, is we're starting to move over into modular components for the building, including actually constructed modular units for the condo hotels, where you literally truck them in and assemble them. And more and more that we'll do that more and more. That's quite prevalent in Asia and in Europe, and it's starting to catch on. I think about, I want to say like 5% of medium price hotels are being built that way by now, but I'd have to look at the exact number on it. Yeah.
You touched on it briefly, but where you're looking at building to start off is kind of in a very remote section of the property overall. What's your expectation of building access to get to that parcel?
Yeah, so we would, with city staff, we would, so with state lands, it's just kind of a funny thing. So state land said, we would have to put together the master plan for the 741 acres on our dime, okay? And then they would come in and they would offer the 40 or the 100 acres. And if somebody else came in and bought that, not us, then we would actually get paid back for the master planning. Well, we're not a master planning agency, so that's not really the business that we're in. And so the conversation with them is that the offering has to be sort of specifically tailored to what we're bringing, so other people would not be interested in taking the land and then just coming into the city and say, hey, we bought this land and we just want to turn it into residential tracts. Okay, so there's a whole process of trying to work with Arizona State Lands in order to get what you want. But in terms of the roads, we'd be more than happy to. It is interesting. I drove through it today again, looked at the highway coming off. In the long run, we need to, at a minimum, probably have a right in going into the property off of 260 and maybe a right out, but it's kind of a hard area to get in there, you know? And so it will take some engineering design. And then if you look on the right, the neighborhood on the right is not that easy to get through. Wouldn't make a ton of sense to drive a lot of traffic through it up past the Walmart, but maybe. But really it's the road that's over there on the left. You can see the cross corner where it kind of goes from the orangish red to the other color, and that road was Old Highway something?
I think it's Old Highway 279.
Yeah, it's a big road. It's an easy, straight road. You go in and we could wrap around and get into the property with a minimal of disturbance for hardly anybody, I believe.
No, well, I think you're mistaken there. I think, if you were to expect to utilize Ogden Ranch Road and Old 279, I think it'd be a major impact for that neighborhood up there.
Okay.
And in reality, your access for this entire parcel really should be looked at as coming off of 260,
Right.
but you're not designing it to be built that way. You're not starting at 260 and you're working your
Right.
way up. So if one of the conditions of moving this through the process was that you had to put in the road from 260 all the way up to this 40 or 80 or
Yep.
100 acres, would you be capable and willing to put in that road structure even though you don't own the land under it?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that is one of the big questions, is how does that access off of 260 look? It'd be one of the first things that we would work through, but we'd be very interested in having good access off of 260.
Thank you.
Actually, wouldn't that be the roundabout closer to Thousand Trails?
Oh, no.
That's further down than that.
Ogden Ranch Road, which was just paved, is just out of the picture to the left.
It is massive houses there. That's Verde Village Unit 3, I believe. On that edge.
What was, she said you originally looked at, up by, is it Page Springs Road or the development up there, Spring Creek, that we just annexed? What was wrong with doing it there instead of over here?
I'm not familiar with that one. The entire project?
Yeah.
So,
You said you were looking at property a little bit further north, or?
yeah, so we
That's
actually, we went and put together a project on the El Rojo Grande Ranch and couldn't make that work with the landowner. And then we actually did a pretty big deal with the Verde Valley School and couldn't make that one work. And so we've been looking around, and the land that we originally contacted on was the land that is out past Bill Gray Road,
Right.
out in the desert. And that was the conversation. It's not currently in Cottonwood, but Cottonwood is now annexed pretty close to it, that it would make sense for Cottonwood to annex that land. And so we looked at that land, and Tricia suggested this land, and we think this is better land.
The only other issue with that spot, you have the fire department right across. So if we create a bunch of traffic right there, going in and out, how does that affect the fire department doing what they gotta do?
Lights and sirens.
I'm just thinking volume wise.
It'd require an intersection.
Yeah.
I like the project, but I like it further up Bill Gray.
So just talking just for a second about traffic is, remember, this is going to build out over a number of years. They already have in the villages driverless shuttles. We are planning on all of so our developments in these other locations are 7,000 acres, 2,500 acres, and 2,000 acres. And we're planning on doing driverless shuttles within all of those developments, robot delivery of food and all that sort of stuff. And so if you talk about how we're building this out, our goal is actually to make a resort that somebody doesn't need a car for. So if they're here, that there are close to on-demand shuttles that are going to Jerome or downtown Cottonwood or to Sedona or Phoenix. And so we really want to minimize vehicles to the site and then completely get rid of vehicle use within the site. There'll be no reason for it. But we will have to do traffic studies as part of the process and determine the impacts on each of the roads and if we would need to make improvements to them, which we would absolutely do.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add, ADOT will have to approve, work with us on 260, and we'll come to some location. The one thing about this location versus off of 89A is it does not send traffic to our busiest intersection. 260 and 89A, that intersection, it keeps them this side of that intersection. And anything we can do to not increase traffic at that intersection is probably a good thing.
Although if they're heading to Sedona from there.
Right.
Yeah, it's
The
still gonna-
shuttle would, if they do the shuttle, if that's the program, that would reduce the number of cars going to Sedona via the shuttle
Sure.
versus an individual car for each unit kind of thing is the thought.
Okay.
sorry.
Go
To
ahead.
bring it back to the rainwater capture, so for stormwater, what does that capture look like in a physical, literal way? Is it tanks? Is it retention ponds? Is it underground? Because you do have residential along parts of this property, and I'm sure that we don't want to be setting up lines of tanks for them to look at.
No, I agree with you. This would be, we'd completely use the guidance by Arizona State and by the city, but my thought was retention ponds.
Mr. Mayor, would this be a good time to ask Ms. Whitmer to come up and talk about stormwater retention?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, members of the Commission. In the state of Arizona, they basically have a bifurcated legal system when it comes to water. We look at surface water different than we look at groundwater. In Arizona, in order to capture, divert surface water, you have to have a water right for that. Surface water in the state of Arizona is defined as any water from any source flowing in a natural drainage. So if you want to capture rainwater, you're going to have to capture it off the hardscape areas, roadways, rooftops, and so on. Other than that, you cannot capture or divert for use surface water without a surface water right. And in trying to get a surface water right in the state of Arizona, especially in the Verde Valley, is virtually impossible.
So, Ms. Whitmer, if I can clarify.
Sure.
If the water touches the ground, dirt, we can't retain it.
If it's
We have to pull it off the hard-
sheet flow, you can. However, that becomes very dicey because we have so many drainages out here, washes, ephemeral washes. Any water that hits that, you can't. So when you start talking about retention, you're going to have to be building retention basins that'll be off channel that are capturing water basically from the hardscape areas. Otherwise, it has to be detention, meaning you just slow it down and it still drains completely.
And we would have probably 200 to 300 acres of impervious, roads, sidewalks, rooftops. Does that sound about right? 200, 250?
I haven't seen the development, so I don't.
And the water on average per year is 9 inches? Is that what it is?
It runs about 12 here in the valley.
About 12,
And evaporation here is between 3.5 and 4 feet a year.
right. So it's potentially 250 acre feet in total. And the question is, how much of that could we capture? And the water amenities would take maybe 100 acre feet. So if we could capture 40% of it, but again, even the retention basins have evaporation, so
Yes,
you got
they
to
do.
do that. And then the question is the year round. So can we capture it and re-inject it and get a credit? No.
No, not stormwater.
Okay, so that's the question is, see if we can design this so we can get 100 acre feet maybe net out of it, would be ideal. But maybe it's not 100, maybe it's 80 or 60 or so on.
Yeah, that's rather ambitious to think
Is
that
it?
you can get 100 acre feet of storage from
Right.
stormwater.
On 741 acres?
Yeah,
Okay,
simply because of, you've got losses in your capture, as you said earlier, other than, if you have evaporation, you have percolation, you have lots of things that are going on that actually compound or impact how much you can actually capture. And then you've got the surface water law issue that you've got to get around as well.
right.
So to think that you can capture 100% of what you've got in the hardscape area is rather ambitious.
Right.
How much that is, I don't know, and it's going to be variable depending on the year. Like last
Yeah.
summer, it would have been virtually zero.
Right.
This summer, it would have been really good. But there again, it's highly variable here in the valley or in Arizona in general. So I would not rely on that as a primary source of your water for your water amenities.
Okay.
It definitely can supplement it, but you're going to have to do some extensive cleaning of that simply because of
Sure.
the issue of when you start capturing off hardscape, mostly roadways,
Yeah, oil.
you've got all kinds of stuff in that
Tires
water
and
that you
all that.
really don't want to be bathing in.
Yeah, absolutely. But so if we do end up 200 to 250 acres of impermeable, do you have a guesstimate on what you think we'd be able to capture on that? A fifth? Maybe? No?
Yeah, maybe.
Because that might be 50, but it still doesn't solve all the problem. Although that would be more than enough water for the first 10 years of the project. And maybe we could reevaluate the extended loop at that time. Only do the main loop and not do the extended loop unless we figure out a way to make good use of the water.
Do we know what the well drilling laws are and how that works?
They certainly do.
Yes, we do, but even those are in question right now. As members of the council currently know, that the Special Master in Adjudication recently came out and issued a decision regarding wells and how they would classify them in relationship to whether they're pumping groundwater or surface water or a combination of both. That is going to impact all well drilling in this state. In the Verde Valley, it's going to really have an impact on it. If her decision holds up, and if the Kona Depression comes through the way it appears it might go, virtually all wells will be deemed to be pumping at least some portion of surface water. And given that no wells in this valley have a water right associated with them, basically implies that you're illegally pumping water.
I mean, the truth of the matter is that build out just from the residential and commercial use, you're well over 1,000 acre feet per year, probably 1,500. And so that is the larger water use in the project. So we're not talking about just the 50 to 100 that the amenities would use.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Whitmer? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
All right. Commissioners, council, any other thoughts?
You could put in a quad or dirt bike track where some of that water is and then get rid of the need for some of the water at least.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the subject that, Mr. Barrett and I spoke with the city manager on the phone, and there's so much about this project that I really like and I think this community needs. We all know we need housing. There's no doubt about that. We needed housing 10 years ago or longer even. And even the resort style homes or housing here, I think, there's room for that in this valley. We know that. Tourism's important to our economy. But really where I feel friction with the development is in its use of water. And I know that you can prove time and again that it's not that consumptive, certainly not as much as golf courses, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems to go against the grain of the kind of culture of conservation that we've built here in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, moreover, my larger concern. I'm really curious to hear how the rest of council and the commission feels. We need to try to get some kind of direction so that this gentleman can decide, is this the right community? Is this the right time? Can he move forward? He doesn't obviously want to invest too much time and money without, a clear sense of direction from this community. So if we could try to brainstorm and give him something to go off of. that'd be great.
What are the things that we like? Let's go through that part first. Hopefully that's the longer list, but let's just find out.
I like the bike pump track. If you're about the amenities, all of the non-water amenities sound wonderful. The Desert Botanical Garden, the proposed amphitheater, Culinary Institute, the trails. Top Golf would be wonderful. I think as a council, we've discussed the need for activities for all age groups in Cottonwood, but I have to agree with our mayor. The proposed water amenities, as they've been presented tonight, are just not in line with our core values as a community. And I would be interested, if you, Mr. Barrett, would be interested in some modifications, but it sounds from multiple comments that you've made tonight that your company is not interested. It's a take it or leave it. We take the water features as they've been proposed, or we leave it. And if I'm mistaken, I'd be all ears to hear that I am.
Yeah, so this is not an inexpensive resort. And we are not in Sedona. Both the housing prices, the hotel prices, the nightly stay prices are double in Sedona as here. And so if we're going to build a resort that says we're not in Sedona, but we think we're actually in a better place, Sedona, that gives you more recreation, more amenities, more opportunities, plus you can go into Sedona for 1 or 2 days while you're here, that is an economic message that makes sense, and we believe we can be successful with. But in order to have that message and have it actually go out to the market and make sense, this resort has to be better than any resort in Sedona. And so you look at Enchantment or Auberge, or, I mean, those are mostly sort of spa-oriented. But the Hilton over there, we feel like we could make a far better resort than any currently exists in Sedona, that has a lot more access to play and activities, horseback riding, jeep, out of Africa, wine tasting tours, mountain biking, equestrian, pump track, top golf, all of those sort of things. But we don't think it will work without something big like the waterway or the surf park. What we are willing to do is, as you can see, this is 741 acres. We're not building 741 acres to start out with. We're building, let's say, 100 acres. We are more than happy to go through a process where we would talk about doing 100 acres with some amenities on it, where you might see only this water right here, and maybe this water right here, and maybe that water right there. So you'd see 3 pools of water to start out with. And that we had some sort of mechanism to determine if the outcome was beneficial to the community or not before we did additional phases. As I mentioned, this is not a master plan. This is not an engineered plan. The design will not look like this. And so we are willing to have the conversation as to what those things look like, but we need to have substantial, unique amenities to make it make economic sense. And so let's just, as an example, let's pretend that the waterway wasn't there, and all we were talking about was the surf park. That would not quite be enough for us, but if you had a surf park here, would that be where you're talking about, again, using evaporation 15 to 20 acre feet per year? You know, so what's the trade-off? I mean, overall, we're talking about making this development as water-wise as it can conceivably be. We're not, you know, unaware of the issues with water and what's going on, but people like water play. You know, people in the community like water play. Visitors like water play. And so it seems like there's probably a lifestyle and an economic justification for providing water play. But maybe not in Cottonwood.
Ditto. We've got water. It's called the Verde River. I think visually and mentally, all the high use of water would be, including the evaporation, would be a eyesore for this community in more ways than one. And I can't imagine the public would want this. And that's just my opinion.
So let me ask you a question on that. You have a lot more water than Phoenix and Tucson. And Tucson in Glendale just approved a crystal lagoon that's far bigger than this, and the public was 100% behind it. Like, every newspaper article on it was saying this was the best thing ever. The city council, the planning commission were unanimous in support. And they actually have far less water than you have. What's the perception difference between Glendale and Cottonwood with regards to that?
You want to keep our water.
Exactly.
We have a more conservation-minded
We do.
community, and I heard this personally when we were going through the annexation for Spring Creek, because that is a riparian area that garnered a lot of public interest when council, and concern when council was discussing the annexation. So if we're talking about Spring Creek, which is much smaller from an acre-foot standpoint, I think I have a good pulse right now of recent community concern about water. Also, sitting here tonight, I can't tell you exactly what our water, how much water we've got. It's still a big question mark for me with regard to what the adjudication, how that's all going to play out. So I can't say tonight with confidence that we have any number of acre feet guaranteed right now.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add to the Glendale piece, we were just down at the League of Cities and Towns, and Glendale had their big display up there that included the waterways, but it was really about the expansion of their amusement area, their entertainment district. It wasn't in the middle of a beautiful, next to our national forest kind of thing. It was just another extension of their development. It included an amusement park. They're adding a Hot Wheels design, I think is what I saw there. So they're adding the waterways and they're adding a Hot Wheels thing. And it just seems to fit with Glendale's expansion of their entertainment area there off the highway. And so, and again, I'm just staff, but what to me is, you don't see a picture like this of Glendale surrounded by green mountains and a Verde River.
So we're on the subject of trade-offs. If we didn't have something like that going on this property, what do you see this property looking like in the future? Split up into quarter-acre lots with houses on them? And think about the water use that's going to make and what that's going to look like. And we've got plenty of that. Granted, we're going to have more, we need more, but I mean, there you go. So I don't see this densely packed with residences. So I think as far as the water use goes, that's a trade-off right there, that it's not densely packed with residential units. And quarter acre, I don't see anybody building anything on quarter acre now. It's more like, 15/10 of an acre. So that could eventually and potentially be just nothing but a mass of houses that looks like the Verde Village. Your presentation is very good, and I'm kind of proud of Cottonwood that you would even consider bringing something like this to us. I think that's just a point of pride that you would think about in making an investment like this here. Personally, I think it's great, and I think, like I said, the water trade-off. Sure, it looks bad politically. It might be a bit of an issue there, but really, that land is going to be used for something, and it's probably not going to be a wilderness preserve in the future. So I think it's good. I think if you could work it out. I know how things go with state trust land. I've done some research and buying and helping people look at leasing state trust land, and I did some research, and I found it's a very rare circumstance that somebody that asked the state trust department to put land up to auction, that there wasn't but one bidder on it, and that was the applicant. And as far as water goes with adjudication, that's your risk. You know what's going on. I'm sure you're quite familiar with it. You seem to have a lot of experience around here. Other communities are getting something like this, and I'd like to capture some of that market for our area up here. But so I think really I would love to hear and find out more of what future water use for this property could look like that didn't have all the water features but had densely packed housing subdivisions on it.
I
I
think
think it's great.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's an excellent point. When I first saw this project, I thought, oh God, like anywhere but Cottonwood, because it visually looked sort of
So
an
this
eyesore.
is, I'm sorry, this is Glendale?
This
is
one,
not our
yeah.
project. And you can see the roller coaster and the giant hotel. I apologize, I didn't mean to.
You don't want a hot air
This is not what ours would
balloon,
look like,
just-
just so we're
yeah,
clear on
that's
that.
great.
I apologize.
Perfect.
Commissioner
The other
Romeo,
thing
if you
that
could pull the
comes to
mic.
mind, though,
I'm
is-
so sorry to interrupt you, but if you could pull the mic a little bit closer just so we can have the chair.
Sure. The other thing that comes to mind is the quality of the jobs that this particular development would provide. We do have quite a bit of service industry in this town, and we do thrive off of tourism, so that is a bulk of our job base. We just need to be mindful that we need quality, high-paying jobs here in Cottonwood as well, because we have a hard enough time staffing the existing service industry that we have because folks can't afford to live here. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing that comes to mind is when you indicate that you're going to market, to Southern California and areas. I understand that on the resort side of it. I would be interested to see, you indicated three-thirds, the resort third, the secondary home third, and then the primary residence third.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about
the primary residences and how,
Yeah.
what phase, is that gonna be in year 20 or is that gonna be in year 2? Kind of what phase does that come into?
No, so our goal for all of our developments is to have as many different product types selling at the same time as possible, which it increases the build out and the net present value of the project. So we would do primary residential homes, villas, townhomes. We would do secondary homes, villas, townhomes. So the reason why I even distinguish between those is the primary residential within the homeowners association do not have the same HOA dues of everybody else, but they also cannot Airbnb or VRBO their property. Okay, so there's a very distinct line. If you're buying here, you're not renting it out to people on the weekend, which we've all seen what's happened in Sedona, that there's no housing left because you make more money VRBO, right? And so we go through and do that. And then the secondary homes are the same type of product types we'd sell at the same time. And they can be rented out, and they're rented out through the resort. The entire property is run as a resort. There's a community in Florida by Destin called Sandestin. It was an interest design village. It's got like 4 golf courses, it's got beach towers, it's got a bay village, it's got 50 different product types. And when you go to stay there, it gives you like 50 different choices to stay there. So this is much more of a, it's much more of a village or a community than it is a resort hotel. And so the idea is to build them out as demand happens on all of those different pieces. And the third is just sort of the base guideline that we go through. When we go into the marketplace, if there's a demand for primary that we can meet that is beneficial, then it might be 40, 30, 30, or whatever it is. And we're more than happy to have that conversation with planning and with city council to meet objectives for those items.
So speaking of community, would you be open to the idea of building workforce housing for your workforce
Yes.
on the property?
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify, I was confirming, this project would need zoning, would need rezoning, would need permits from this body. That would allow us to put restrictions and requirements in there as we negotiate through this, not pre-development or anything, but we could set it up to meet the requests that I heard tonight if we decide to move forward. A lot of times there's a given rights, and so we can't negotiate, workforce housing or lower price, but we would be able to sit at a negotiating table and have a conversation about what the city wanted along with this. And then switching gears a little bit, Ms. Whitmer, we haven't really talked about the use of reclaimed water. And he has something to add. If you don't mind calling him back.
Oh, sure. Mr. Whitmer, come on, back up.
Good evening again. I'm Tom Whitmer. I'm the utilities director here. It just dawned on me when I was sitting back there listening to this, and I'm going, if you're going to have to, if you were planning on capturing, water off the roadways, hardscapes, and whatever, you're going to have to treat that to basically potable standards in order to use it full body contact. If you're going to do that, why don't you go ahead and treat the reclaimed water, your effluent, to potable standards and use that, because you're going to produce a whole lot more there than you could capture on the roadways.
Right.
And if you're using the same technologies, it's going to cost you the same.
So is that legal in Arizona?
If you were to treat the potable standards, absolutely. So if you were to do that, you could use full body contact, just doing the back of the envelope calculations on 3,700 units with 2 people per household, based upon what we capture here, you're looking at easily capturing or producing about 500 acre feet a year of reclaimed water which is more than enough for your water amenities, plus you can still inject and use it for irrigation.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Does anybody have a problem swimming in reclaimed water? No. Clean reclaimed water. What do you call it?
Potable water.
Yeah, it's just water.
I mean, the city right now is looking at that as we speak. What it would take to convert one of our wastewater treatment plants to produce potable quality water. And we're looking at that as we speak right now with the Bureau of Reclamation. So, yeah, like I said, if you're going to capture off hardscape for full body contact, you're going to have to treat it to that standard anyways.
Right. That's a good point. That's a really good idea.
I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying, it just dawned on me.
I think we have to go in that direction at some point. natural water is a limited resource. And I think those comments in combination with Councilmember Matthews' comments about if that just becomes additional residential, we have a lot less control over the water usage in that scenario and a lot more lost water that we'll experience. And I think that this is the kind of project that Cottonwood needs. We need more family activities. Sedona, it is more of a spa community and more of, a retirement type community, and we're different. And we need something that stands us apart from Sedona. And this is the type of project that I would be, as long as we had these kinds of water conservation techniques in place, that I would absolutely support.
If I may just say one more thing as well, reclaimed water or effluent, that's owned by the producer of that water source. It's not part of the adjudication unless you discharge it into a natural drainage, it then becomes surface water. So that's one source of water that grows with population. It increases with population. That's why we're looking at it so closely here in the city, trying to ensure that we're using it to the most optimum way and most beneficial way to the city, because that may be the only source we have available to us if the adjudication comes along and slaps a cap on the amount of water that we can pump.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's the future.
It is.
It's got to be.
Anything else?
All right, Commissioner Garrison.
What other development have you done in the state of Arizona? You talking
None.
about a lot of other places. So this would be your toehold in developing within rural Arizona.
We're currently looking at land south of Casa Grande in Pinal County. And we're meeting with the commissioner. That would be a much bigger, much longer term smart community. So it'd be an entire city that we'd be doing down there. And it's based on where the 11 alignment might come through there. But no, this would be the first one in Arizona.
I did have a question for Tom, and I know he's already gone back, so maybe Juan or Steve, you can actually answer this. If the AMA does go through, all future development could grind to a halt anyway. So when we're talking about thousands of houses at the same location, that has just as much chance of moving forward as anything right now.
Based on, we have to, do the calculations, but everything's at risk moving forward depending on what happens with adjudication and the hearing.
The AMA, consideration of an AMA is not under consideration by the county. What they're looking at is considering adopting a mandatory adequate water supply requirement for new subdivisions, which is not AMA. In the AMA, it's assured water supply. Outside, it's adequate water supply, which is completely different than what's inside an AMA. And that's important difference between the two.
What's the impact?
The impact, here's where it gets real muddy because of the adjudication. Prior to the decision by the special master, wells that were outside the subflow zone were considered to be pumping percolating groundwater. And under that definition, what that would mean is if you were looking to propose building a subdivision here within the city limits or even outside the city limits, if we had a mandatory adequacy, they would have to go ahead and apply to get an adequate water supply determination from the Department of Water Resources. The current definition in statute is if you can demonstrate that over the course of 100 years, you will not cause, in other words, your subdivision's proposed or estimated demand will not cause the groundwater table to decline below 1,200 feet below surface, you're deemed to be having an adequate water supply. So here in the Verde Valley, that's pretty easy to do. You get up in the foothills area where you have it's not quite as thickness of saturation, it becomes a little more difficult, but down in the valley area, that's easy because you've got a basin here that goes down to 3,500 foot depth in water. In the valley here, you're estimated to have anywhere from, there's all kinds of estimates, but anywhere from 6 million to almost 8 million acre feet of water in storage here. Current total demand from all wells is around 14,000 acre feet. You, on average, have about 132,000 acre feet of recharge occurring every year in the valley here. Pretty simple math.
Questions?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Not for Tom, but for a gentleman up here. So you mentioned you haven't been in Arizona yet. Do you have any of these anywhere?
Yeah, so we're going on, we've got 3 major projects underway in Utah, and have an offering on land in Palm Desert. So this actual waterway, I didn't show you the big pictures because it'd scare you. They have over in Pakistan and Dubai and, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. They're in Malaysia, they're in Bolivia, and they have like 40-acre lagoons that are just crazy out of this world. And so the technology has been built on developments that are 100 times bigger than this, that are across the world. But like I said, because of our US regulation, the first one in the US on these waterways only came into Florida, I'd say like 4 years ago, into Wesley Chapel. But there's, oh my word, there's 30 in development. Rancho Mirage actually has already approved a crystal lagoon. So it's a strange thing, you think about Palm Desert and you think desert, and it uses more water than I swear the entire state of Arizona. There's like 100 golf courses in there. The crystal lagoon that's going in there is like 50 or 60 acres. It's just enormous. And so the technology is all proven out, and so we're going through the process now.
Okay. Have you had any conversations like what we're having here with the State Trust Department?
I have, yeah. So that's actually why we got to this point. Was I called up Karen, and very pleasant, and she was saying, well, here's how we'd have to go about it. And I said, well, we're going to do all the work. People will say, yeah, that's a really good plan. We'll come in and buy it. And I said, well, how do you do that? She said, well, we had a big tract, like $100 million parcel in Phoenix, that they had a semiconductor company come in that wanted to put in a fab plant. And they did all of the work, tons of work, millions of dollars of work. I said, well, how did they end up just some residential builder not just come pick that up? And she said, well, if the county or the community supports it and signs on to it, we can put very tight restrictions on it. And that's why this whole conversation is here.
Okay.
We would have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, $500,000 doing the planning and doing all the work and the traffic studies and the water studies and all those things. And then somebody just comes in there and buys the land for homes. And so that is the whole point of saying this is actually a great opportunity for the city, in that you can look at it and we can talk about what you want and write it right into that and put those restrictions on the land from the very beginning.
Well, highest and best use is one of their big
It is,
qualifiers.
absolutely.
So, thank you.
All right, we've heard from maybe half of our council and commissioners, so let's go ahead and hear from the rest. Don't be shy. Chairman, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Chairman Williams. Just a few comments. Pardon my hoarse voice. Hallelujah. Finally, a developer willing to build something other than, quarter acres, single-family residences. I think that's a real plus. Also, I think a resort in this town would be just tremendous economic boost to our area. This location, it's outstanding, being right on the south side of our city rather than 6 miles out. And it definitely has much better near-term development potential. And overall, except there's the water park, I would think much less controversial than some of the other things we've been looking at. I certainly agree with Councilman Laggles. I hate to just see another cookie cutter subdivision would be developed with a bunch of cookie cutter subdivisions out there. It's a unique property. It's very developable. I think we should go forward. It sounds like a really exciting project. I'm sorry I'm not there tonight to see all the slides, but the devil's always in the details as we get down the road. The water park, yes, that's the big elephant in the room. But I guess if they can secure conservation easements, which will offset the use of the water, I think that really makes that a feasible situation. Maybe not politically for you guys, but I think it would make it feasible. As far as capturing runoff, I know that's a big good buzzword. I would agree with Tom that that's very questionable in this area. Certainly not dependable. And if it were to go forward, I think it would have to be based on no city water, those are these features, and they do secure the conservation easements to offset it. And also, again, you know, we want to be working with the Friends of the Verde River, people like Nature's Conservancy, and then get a lot of input before it's over. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Do you want to speak? I've talked quite a bit, but I am in favor of this project. I think that it will be a boon to the city economically, and I'm very pro economic boom. And I think that reclamation and conservation easements both really help make this feasible. I do think you scared everybody a little bit with some of those slides. And I would suggest taking a look at some of like the natural river features that are going through Reno, which are narrower. So maybe you can get more of your effect without so much water, but it sounds like that's all flexible anyway.
It is.
Yeah, and it also, I think that part of this is a marketing problem, and just getting ahead of it and sharing the conservation-minded elements with the public, because I absolutely understand for the council members that there is a conservation-minded element of Cottonwood who will, if they see photos like that, get upset. They will have a knee-jerk reaction. So if something like this goes forward, we'll have to be very mindful of being super transparent and let people know about some of those conservation efforts. And also, that's the only way this can move forward.
Right. I agree with what she says, and I think it's an exciting project for Cottonwood. And it's something that I feel Cottonwood needs moving forward. I think Cottonwood has gotten a bit stagnant. You know, we've talked about affordable housing and so forth, but this is an absolute step in the future for the city of Cottonwood. So I am all in favor of it, and I think the water issues can be worked on.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I agree with most of the others. I do want to thank you for, you traveled at a great distance to present for us tonight. I appreciated your presentation. It's very thorough. I was pleased to see, you addressed the water issues right at the top, as well as sustainability. Otherwise, it's pretty much a consensus here. I think we're all interested in water play and the things that it can bring to our economy. The challenges here is that the Verde really is the lifeblood of our area. And you would be hard pressed to find anybody that would compromise our natural resource for man-made.
Right.
I can only speak for myself, but if you can continue to show us that there's flexibility in that and the ways that we can preserve the Verde and have both, as there's obviously going to be impact with that, with extra traffic to the Verde too, and they'll work with you on that. For Mr. Whitmer, if I'm saying that right. I don't know if this is feasible, but I was wondering with the surface water capture and hardscape, if, obviously you only have rights to certain areas, but if there's other areas in town that are troubled spots, we have a lot of flooding issues around here, if some of that could be captured and him use that, no.
I don't think so.
Because we have areas that we could pull water from that we don't need water. We learned that in the last month. And that was just a question I had. Otherwise, I'm neutral to it. I think there's pros and cons, and would be welcome to hear more. But at this point, we're all kind of, I think, on the fence with what's going to go on with our water rights that we have. We would be skeptical to approve something like this and not be able to promise you the end result that you're looking for. If you could talk to us about the housing coming first, we're all ears. And
can I just ask, so I read the housing study, and you saw I had a piece in there. What's the biggest housing need and issue?
Workforce.
Workforce meaning subsidized housing?
It's in like the $30,000 to $50,000 a year range.
In my opinion, I think that workforce housing encompasses low-income housing in addition to people who are making just above that. And I manage 2 low-income properties here that are subsidized in town, and my wait lists are astronomical. And so we do need that too, but we also need the workforce housing for the people that make just above that, because a lot of people are falling through the cracks. They're $1,000 over, and I can't put them in my housing. So we need the whole range of workforce housing, in my opinion.
So I read the study, and they had the chart that showed the income versus the number of housing units.
Mr. Barrett, I'm so sorry. If you could get closer to your mic, I'm sorry. Thank you.
The housing study, and it had the graph, and it had the chart where it said you're minus 300 units in this price range, minus 100 units in this price range, and stuff like that. And as I put on one of my papers, there was that one that said income of like 60 to 110,000, which you would think that there would be housing in that income range, but there was a huge gap there. It was, I think, the biggest gap in there. And so I think what we would want to do is sit down with whoever in the city is the right person, and within the planning stage, identify employee housing, maybe some low-income housing, and then address that gap, which is, I think, what we would be more than happy to do. Is that a fair comment, or is that, what do you think?
I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah.
I think that adding some low income to the affordable portion of that would make it more appealing to folks like me.
Sure.
But I'm not entirely convinced that the public is going to feel that this is good for Cottonwood. I'm not convinced that the public thinks that we need a resort town in Cottonwood. I hear from people all the time that we need to stop trying to attract more tourism. We have enough. We're a small town. We like the small town feel. We don't want to become Sedona or Phoenix or any of those. And so I'm not convinced the public is going to want this to go forward.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. I mean, we have meetings like this all the time, and there's people who want economic growth, and there's people who don't want things to change. The thing that we've seen, of course, in Arizona is that there is outrageous growth. A lot of it coming from California, Phoenix, Tucson, in between. Sedona is out of land, and so Cottonwood is the area, and including that 6,700 acre block there. And as someone mentioned, I can't remember who it was, school trust lands are there to sell that land for highest and best use. That land is not state park land. That is land to be monetized and to go into the school funds. And so I'm not sure you can stop growth. But I do understand that in any community there is no matter the size of the community, there are people who think that is exactly the right size. There's no question about it.
And you can't stop growth, and we all understand that. We just want to be smart about it.
Yeah.
And so, the secondary vacation homes bothered me a little bit too. But if we added some low-income housing and a little bit more of the primary housing and a little less of the secondary housing, that would also make it more appealing, I think, to people.
So we're completely open to that sort of negotiation conversation. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, very good.
Just a tip on that, one of the things that the commission has talked about quite a bit is the need for townhomes in the $60,000 income range. So something like that, that's sort of a bridge between apartments and
We would
housing.
absolutely do that.
That particular gap you're referring to, Mr. Barrett, is those that can afford a bigger, better home can't find it here, so they wind up buying the homes that would otherwise go to our workforce. And so that's a real issue here.
And that does make a lot of sense. Because I looked at that and I couldn't wrap my head around why that made any sense, but that does make sense.
Yep.
Can
All right.
I-
Yes.
I'm sorry, may I
Commissioner
add
Quinn?
on that? I think that exactly kind of hits it on the head. I looked today, our median income, and this was a 2019 number, was I think 40 to 50. So you look at what they would qualify for, and I think with the newer construction that you're proposing, that might be able to accommodate some of our others in that price point that you numbered to move into that and then free up some of the others potentially, depending on time frame and how quickly that could be launched. We don't know what demand's going to be in another couple of years. if we don't have water. So,
In reply to Jackie's comments about, turning Cottonwood into, a Sedona, I actually was thinking about that as he was going through it. But I think that with the promise of jobs to Cottonwood, I think that would, overcome that objection that people would have about Cottonwood becoming another Sedona, let's say. But, how many jobs, we don't know. But, it obviously would bring jobs, and I think the future populations in Cottonwood would be enthused about that. Maybe right now they're and I see it, the population kind of set in their ways. And there's a segment of the population that actually work in Sedona, that travel back and forth to Sedona. Right. So, with the cost of gas and automobile maintenance and so forth, the promise of jobs here within a certain amount of time, would be encouraging and exciting for future
Yeah, that's a really
population.
good point. I mean, we would be, as I mentioned, this would be a higher end resort. And so the people who are working in Sedona at the higher end resorts could work here at the same wages as opposed to driving in Sedona. But the other thing, so in our larger projects, like one of ours in St. George, we have a whole commercial sector where we're...
Mr. Barrett, so sorry, once again, if you can get closer to that
sorry.
mic. Yeah. If your presentation's over, sir, you could come up to the podium and then...
Yeah, why don't I do that? So in St. George, we're actually, these communities are larger, so they have full commercial sectors. And we're targeting in St. George, we're actually going to start a movie studios, okay, movie film production. We're right by the St. George Airport where they're going big on aerospace. We're also doing outdoor retailers, which is a big thing for Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development. And so if there are things like that in our overall communities, what we've seen through COVID is that more and more people of the professional class are able to live and work where they want to live. And I think we all know that that's going to increase in the future through increased Zoom meetings, VR, and everything like that. And so we're looking to build lifestyle communities, especially in our larger projects. And so when you talk about having in there, we would have at least co-working and office space and things like that. And it is a good question of sort of what sort of industry, other than hospitality, tourism, recreation. If there is something specifically that the city has been targeting, we'd be more than happy to set aside space to do that. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Garrison?
Commissioner Romeo, you want to go first? You haven't had a chance.
No, you can go. I think
Okay. There's just so much that we're trying to get through tonight.
Right.
And I think at the basest level of this discussion, it's going to be very hard with this community to ever get past the discussion about this project with the water problem being at the forefront.
Right.
It's just the way it is. As it was stated, the Verde River is our lifeblood. It is what we're known for, the area. It's our natural resource. You're trying to replicate that, and everybody's going to feel that the replication of that is going to steal from our actual resource. If you could figure out a way to be able to come to that table with Tom's calculations saying that you're going to produce, as you build this water ribbon, this green or this blue way, be able to expand that as the water comes online and do it through reuse versus pulling it out of the ground or other places. I think that would go a long ways towards placating that discussion, but I don't think it's ever going to make people comfortable, period. I really like that there's so many other uses on this property. I like the idea of the Topgolf. That'd be great. These different outdoor recreation amenities. One of the problems we have in the Verde Valley and in northern Arizona is we're growing old because there's nothing here for our younger people to do or want to do. And so they move down to the Phoenix and the metro areas because it offers more of those type of amenities where we don't have them here, because we don't have anybody willing to put that resource on the ground. So I like that there's a lot of that in the discussion. I think workforce housing is going to be a huge concern of this. And I'm not sure at the end of the day that just your development by itself is going to be able to offset the housing need just for the people who work there, let alone helping out with the needs of the community currently. I'm not seeing many jobs in this forecast over $100,000. It's all going to be service workers, people handing out towels, people cleaning rooms, people serving meals, people serving drinks. That doesn't pay enough to live here.
Right.
And so nothing in this presentation is showing us that that really is going to be dealt with in some meaningful manner just with your own service workers, let alone taking care of the needs of the other community members. So I think I like some of the parts of this. I like the idea of coming up with a master plan. I like the idea of coming up with some creative uses for water and how to get that water, changing that discussion a little bit. But I think there's just going to be some really significant hurdles for you to get through to get the community off of their back.
So those are really good points. We're going to be highly automated. So we're actually going to try to decrease the lower end service jobs and have more managerial positions. We're also talking about having a resort village that would actually be filled with local businesses. So you would have people with the ability to open shops within the community that potentially create those sort of jobs that you're talking about in there. In terms of the employee housing, that's a really good point. Depending on how much of the employment is year-round versus surge, we would probably do something that you see a lot of resorts do, which is bring people in and put them in employee housing for those surge months to handle things. And I mean, Park City, where I'm from, you know, there are, I got to think about what the number is. It's a very, very, very large number. How about that? Was that specific enough? Number of people that they bring in from overseas, teenagers, people in their 20s who come and live and work in the area, and they have housing for them. We're interested in providing all of that on site so that that does not impact the community. So that's some of the kind of lower end jobs. And then hopefully, you know, teenagers or 20-somethings here that are going to school or still at home have a job to go do, or if they're going into Sedona. So those are the lower paid jobs that you're talking about, absolutely. And then the idea is to create more of a economic dynamism in the village center itself, to where local business owners are able to take advantage of that. But yes, those are all super good points that we would want to work through and identify what the city's needs are, and then see if we can't work through and take care of them. Absolutely.
Your time frame right now to start, if this moves forward, is 10 years? Or
No.
the completion for the first third, I'm sorry. The plan would be 10 years?
So my thoughts are, just to go through the steps, is it would take us 3 to 6 months to come up with a plan, maybe 9 months that is acceptable to us and to the city, that we would present to Arizona State to put specific limitations on it, to make it so that no matter who buys that land, it's going to be built the way that the city wants to do it. I mean, that really is the idea. And then you go through a auction with the state, and then as soon as we bought the land from the auction, we would go through the remaining steps with the city, and we'd be interested in getting started as soon after that as possible. So that could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, and that's one of the reasons why we have quite a number of projects going on. Is it's nearly impossible to estimate in entitlement timeline.
All right. Councilmember Wilson, did you have anything else you wanted to
No.
share? No. Councilmember Henry? Mr. Matthews? Councilmember Matthews?
Oh, just, I mean, I thought Mr. Garrison brought up some good points, and that's up to you to be able to staff your workers. But I think what would be beneficial to a lot of people that work in Cottonwood now and travel to do those jobs in Sedona is, well, unfortunately for Sedona, we poach those people.
Right.
And they work at your resort, and we keep them in town. We give them Cottonwood jobs. So
Yeah.
I think that might be a bit of a benefit for some of them.
Yeah, and we would pay competitive with Sedona, so they wouldn't have to work here for less money.
Vice Mayor?
I'm in favor of a project. Overall, I think there's some manipulations, massaging. One of the things that, pardon me, we have not talked about, we can't attract commercial activity or industrial activity because we have nothing here to offer. Pardon me, to offer for the employees, to attract the management. We can't keep doctors because there's nothing for them here.
Right.
If we have something like this with amenities, we have a starting point to bring more industrial, more commercial to Cottonwood. If we don't wake up, we're going to find ourselves in the middle of an island with everybody around us, just like Clarkdale, with no income coming to the city because everybody else went out and built. We look at what Camp Verde's doing. They're expanding, they're growing, they're bringing industries in, whether you like RV parks or not. That's one of their fortes right now. They're making lots of money on it. 10 years ago, Camp Verde was struggling just to get by day to day. Today, they're doing quite well. Your project, by reducing the number of vehicles, is something that in and of itself is an advantage. I hear people screaming and hollering, what happened to Cottonwood? It's too busy. If you go back 20 years, 25 years, you could drive anywhere in Cottonwood in 5 minutes. Now you're lucky if you can get out on the main road in 5 minutes. And you go to Sedona, I have one doctor in Sedona, and all he does is gripe about the traffic in
Right.
Sedona, and it is terrible. But your project would reduce that, at least as far as that your development is concerned. It would entice other people to come to the Cottonwood area instead of looking at us as being an island between Sedona and everybody else. So I'm in favor of it with some limitations. I don't disagree. I think your waterways might be too big. But Mr. Wetmer explained if you can take your reclaimed water and turn it into potable water, like a lot of communities and states are doing, and produce your water for your waterways with that, I don't see where that's a problem.
And we would be willing to do that.
All right. Councilmember Nairn, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so, thank you.
No? Okay. And then Councilmember Karat?
I like the project. Think maybe a little bit more balance between water and everything else going on. But I like that it brings a lot of stuff to do here when that's definitely lacking. And then I'd like to see more workforce housing. At the same time, there's definitely a discrepancy between what it costs to build and what you can sell it for to at least break even, if not, and sure the goal is to make money on the deal. But if we could come up with some kind of happy medium to that, I think we could make it work.
Do you have, what's it called? Habitat for Humanity?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, we'd be interested in partnering with people also and saying donating land to doing something like that. I mean, that's not our expertise. We're more than happy to build or participate or do whatever you'd like us to do, but that might be a better conversation with a group of shareholders to figure out how to handle it.
All right. Good.
Good work.
Okay. All right, Mr. Barrett, I think you've heard from all of the commissioners and the council. I think you have a pretty good sense of where we stand. It sounds
Yeah.
like water is still a concern, but not as big a concern for my colleagues as it is for me individually. But I think there's a way to work around that. We certainly welcome development here in Cottonwood. We know this land is slated for development. We want to see it developed in a way that's smart and addresses the needs of our community. I can tell you've already thought a lot about that, and you have some good partners in mind to help work through this. So it seems like you're getting a green light from these two boards. As the chairman said, devil's in the details, as you know, but I think we can work these sorts of things out. This is just a work session this evening, so we don't normally get the public involved in terms of addressing the council, but I know we have some folks from our community here. If you want to reach out to any one of our members up here, you're more than welcome to do so. We can address your concerns. And as this moves forward, if it does move forward, it's going to be a very robust public process. And
sure.
Yeah, we'll have many opportunities for the public to come in and address you.
It'd be great if, so I've listened closely, but I didn't take a bunch of notes. And I will obviously at this point start working with staff, but if there are specific things that you want to make sure that I heard correctly, and anybody, and I'll leave my contact information, anybody's welcome to call me or email me or express an idea or a concern or a better way to do something. I mean, the way that this is set up, we literally would build this before we went through the process with state lands. And so we'd want to make sure it is as close to either likable or agreeable as we can get it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Tricia Lewis will be the staff lead on that. Of course, Scott's in charge of community development, so he'll have a significant role in it. And of course, the city attorney, and as we work through how to make this happen. But Tricia Lewis, email me or Tricia, and Tricia will get the questions or points in as needed to prevent any double communication. But Tricia Lewis will be the
Okay. All right.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, please.
I would like you to just think about how I understand there's a lot of benefits to keeping vehicles off the roads, and I'm totally in favor of that. I also want to make sure that some of the money that is coming into your resort stays local. So to think about ways to do that. And then the other thing that comes to mind in terms of maybe what the community might need, and this is not based in fact, but maybe some mentorship program or like trade or apprentice program with the local high school might be really cool, so that we can somehow bring a benefit to the youth who can grow up and hopefully
So I'll
get
actually
better paying
share
jobs here.
the proposal we put together for Verde Valley School, because they had excess land. We actually had oh my words, performing arts, culinary, farms, the whole thing that we were talking about doing with them. And so I'll pass that on to Tricia. She can pass that out also. And yeah, if you have some ideas on what you think would be great there, absolutely. We're very happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'd love to see a makerspace for the kids where they can go and learn how to weld or do electrical or what have you. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, and if the local community colleges and colleges have programs, absolutely. We need to, I have not reached out to them, but to find out where their emphasis is. I think I saw that Yavapai bought, or we're going to buy a 3D home builder. We're something that we're very interested in exploring that. So we could absolutely set up, for some low-income housing, we could explore. I'm trying to remember where the first one was done here in the U.S., I think in Texas. No, maybe it was in Mexico,
It was
just
in
over
Texas
the border.
and it sold for $768,000.
For one building?
Yes.
No, there was one that I saw that they did 3D printed, like this little common courtyard with little, almost like tiny houses.
Oh, Austin.
Huh?
Austin.
In Austin.
In the county.
And I thought that was actually really neat, and we could explore it. I mean, from our point of view, if we're going to do subsidized housing or low-income housing, we don't want to separate it out and build a big wall there, right? And the whole idea of everything that we do on all of our projects, we back onto water or a bike trail or an equestrian trail or a ski run. So every single thing is amenitized, and especially on this property. I mean, there's so many washes through there, you're going to have a lot of open space no matter what. And so we would love to talk about what it would look like to do an attractive low-income housing. we'd be very interested in that.
Mr. Mayor, just for the group, Yavapai College is working on the 3D building to the Chino Valley. We actually have a business opening up in the city of Cottonwood that's 3D printing. They're also bringing the machine here already for 3D printing.
Oh, awesome.
They're going through the process of getting the permits right now. So Cottonwood is on 3D printing, and Yavapai College is working hard, so.
Great.
I will say, and one last thing, which is great about that. So one of the reasons in St. George that we're putting those additional economic developments, they're talking about doing a huge aerospace development just outside of the airport. But one of the key pieces was, well, how do you attract companies there? The companies that are literally thinking about, we're going to move from California, they want to move somewhere better. And if they're going to move somewhere better, that includes the employees, it includes the executives, and they're going to want to go to a place. And so on the property itself, obviously, you're not going to have industrial or huge commercial, but offering those sort of amenities and housing and stuff really has potential to tie into whatever other city goals you have in terms of economic development.
On that topic, are you able to share an estimated ballpark development budget for this project, or even a range? What are we looking at here?
That is a very detailed question. If you're talking about 3,500 units, that's a lot. It's certainly overall, but I mean, there is land cost, there's entitlement cost, there's construction cost, and then there's gross revenue. And a lot of times when you hear developers talk and they say, well, it's a $2 billion project. Well, this is a $2 billion project, but it's a $2 billion project over 20 years. And that's not $2 billion of profit by any stretch. You have all the steps that go through there. But yeah, if you just go through the rate of inflation, the number of units that are on there, and the dollar amount, sure, it comes up at least into that range. But I'm very hesitant about using numbers like that because they're kind of, you know, it's almost like you're pulling a number out of the air.
I understand, just wondering what your group is looking at, ballpark long-term investment in our area, since we're talking about the economic
Yes.
piece.
In terms of the process, entitlement and land, you know, for the first pieces is $3 to $5 to $7 million. But like I said, in our group, we do not come in and build in a $150 million J. Willard Marriott to start out with. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. Okay? We come in and we market and we produce product at different styles, and we will bring on single-family home builders in the area. So local builders, we will bring local builders in. We don't build the villas, the townhomes, the single family. We either sell the land or partner on that. We do the stack condos. Eventually there'll be a hotel pad that we'll sell off, which is a different business than what we're in. So it's wrapping a lot of stuff together to come up with any certain number, but it's a lot of money, absolutely. The surf parks would be $10 to $15 million. The waterway, if it actually got built to that extent over time, would be $25 million. But again, you build that over time, you don't build it at one time. So I don't know if that was vague enough for you or semi-specific.
Close enough, I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Barrett. Well, safe travels to you. Appreciate you being here.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I then would move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.